don't let fear or awkwardness hold you back. Like, you're never going to have that perfect post. You just learn by doing. So you're going to learn by creating. You're going to put stuff out there. 6 months later, you're going to look back and be like, eek, what was I thinking? Like, that's so cringe. But that's okay because you learned, right? You've evolved. So don't let fear of messing up. Don't let self-rejection or judgment hold you back. Go out there and post.
Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by Purna Virji. Purna is the author of High Impact Content Marketing. She's been at Microsoft. She's now at LinkedIn. She's basically been everywhere and all around the world. But Purna, that's probably quite a grand introduction. So why don't you help me take it down a notch and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Dan, for having me. I think at the heart, I just love marketing. So I'm just a pure marketer, and I've just been lucky in my career through, hard knocks and good fortune to approach marketing in different angles, from starting off as a journalist to working in a TV production and approaching content marketing through the journalist point of view, to then working from a PR point of view, to then just falling head over heels in love with SEO, paid search, digital marketing. And since then, I joke that I probably approached content marketing from every angle possible, from agency side, from in-house, from as a solopreneur briefly, to working at a search engine, to a ad platform, to social media platforms. I'm like, I'm not sure what's left now, but I will find it.
Now, we were talking just before this call that when people look at our LinkedIn profiles, we can sometimes see a bit of a show reel of our success stories, but it hasn't always been that way. And sometimes serendipity and good fortune presents itself to you, and other times you have to look for it. And I'm just wondering about what your experience has been, because as a show reel, as a highlights reel, journalism, TV producer, PR, working for some of the world's biggest brands seems extraordinary. But I know it hasn't always been that way for you. So talk us through in a little bit more detail about your story and perhaps what's behind some of the different highlights.
For sure, Dan. And yeah, you're right. Like, social media is always people's highlight reel, and some things are serendipity and some things are just clawing your way out of tough situations. And we all have them. So I'm glad that you bring this up. Like, not enough people talk about it. But one of the best pieces of advice I got was, if you look back, we're not like, the dots will always connect. Like, every time I'm like, well, this sucks. Like, I'm in such a dark place. Like, what's going to happen? They're like, nope, nope, nope. You've just been planted. You've not been buried. Like, you've been planted. You're going to grow. It's going to be better. And each time they've been right? I've been through redundancies. I've been through being laid off. And it's the hardest, shocking thing, especially the first time when it happens. It's devastating. And so then you're like, well, what happens next? What could I have done differently? But one of the key things that sort of helped me find the serendipity in my life and get those next right opportunities has been aligning to, and it's going to sound really cheesy, but it's aligning to my sort of core values and my core purpose. Like, something I realized. So my son was born with severe health issues when he was born, and it was just a really hard time. And something I'd learned in a meditation class was that, when you can be of service to others, like, you'll start feeling better. And I've tried everything else and like eaten an entire grocery store worth of food. And I'm like, comfort eating is doing nothing. So let's try the service thing. And so I tried to give back, and it actually was so powerful. And so I'm like, how do I bring that to my career? When I learned digital marketing, like, I was so lucky to stand on the shoulders of giants such as like the Rand Fishkins of the world or the Brad Gettys, who would learn and be so, generous with sharing their knowledge and their information. And something Will Reynolds, who runs Sear, had told me is like, Purna, if somebody sends the elevator down for you, it's your job to send it back down for somebody else. And so from my very first sort of industry speaking gig, I'm like, how do I give back? Like, how do I share my knowledge and empower others to sort of honor my teachers, but also be of service? And that's been the connective tissue in every type of job that I've had. So it helped me go from the world of startups and scale-ups, which I love, I'm so passionate about, to getting found by Microsoft. Like, I would speak at different events to help give back. And then I got to know some of the folks at Microsoft. And then when they were putting together a brand new team, like one of the girls there reached out. She's like, hey, you'd be perfect for this team. Like, would you want to, apply or come, come talk to the hiring manager? And so that was really, really fortunate. Again, like being in the right, trying to give back was that connective thread. And then at Microsoft, my job was pretty much to sort of evangelize our search ads business and get to work with the search engine and with the publishing team and go and educate others and lift others. And so I really believe that when you try to lift others up, like that's when you rise in your career. And so Dan, some of the stuff that you were sharing about how you're going to help um, businesses with like purpose and organizational structure and driving real meaningful change, like that's your purpose, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about, as you look back, you see the dots joining in interesting ways that you weren't expecting. And I'm definitely beginning to see the stars align as I look backwards, because I was a youth worker back in the day, used to run clubs for young people, support their families, run training for volunteers. And that was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. But all of that stuff has planted the seed in all the jobs that I've done since. And the way I show up in the world is really can be traced back to those roots that I started nurturing then. So I'm hoping to see now with Anthem and supporting companies, as you just mentioned, I'm hoping to see some of those different threads, those different storylines from my life beginning to work together in a new way. And I loved what you said there, by the way, about if somebody sends the elevator down for you, then it's your job to send it down for somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that's such an inspiring way to celebrate the advantages that you've been given or the opportunities that you've been given by paying it forward, I guess, to other people. But to anyone listening to this episode today and hearing Purna's story, just bear in mind that whatever you're going through right now, whatever turbulence you're facing in your career, keep your eye open for those elevators that might be coming your way. Keep opening yourself up to those serendipitous moments of opportunity. And remember, as you look backwards, all those things, all those threads, they have value. They're going to show up again in new ways that you perhaps weren't expecting to support you as you continue your journey. And the reason why I say all that is because I know that there's so much turbulence in the job market right now, in the economy. It's a very, very tough world for people out there. But one of the things we love to do on this show is to help people with really practical stuff that they can take away and try. And I know that you've been thinking about a framework, something to give our audience to help them take practical action around thought leadership. I think it's called Walk, Crawl, Run. But before we dive into that, Purna, just tell me about who you're speaking to with this framework. Like, who's the listener that you're really trying to connect with in today's episode?
So I would love to speak with, execs, subject matter experts at companies, like people, as you said, this is such a sort of uncertain time in the job market. It's a scary place. Like no one can, it's rare to feel job security, regardless of how successful you may be at your job. And one way that you can help your current organization succeed, as well as help, your own career has been, again, to go back to the send elevator down, is to help others. And so be a thought leader and like share some of more side of who you are. And that can not only help you, your organization with their marketing goals, because it's a way to amplify the message, right? If the company is posting about a brand new product launch, then if an executive posted about it, or then another person who spoke to a more different audience, like a more tactical daily doer audience, would post about it. They'd all come about it in their own way. And people follow people before they follow brands. And so build that out. It'll help your company. Like every organization should be really encouraging and empowering their people to go out and help share their skills, share their knowledge. And then for you as an individual, it's just a massive career boost that you can provide, right? The more you put yourself out there, people will, and it's not an instant process. It takes consistent efforts over time, right? People will start to get to know you. Then maybe they'll start to like you, and then they'll start to trust you. And like once you have that trust, it's so valuable for you. And of course, it's a big responsibility that you have to, not abuse that trust, but give back, help add value, And to our earlier point, like rather than even looking for elevators sent down to me, I found that the more elevators I sent down, it's so karmic. It's helped me rise up even more. As they say, to teach is to learn twice. And so every time I'm mentoring, like I love mentoring and giving back. And so the more I mentor people, every mentoring session, like a mentee will ask me like, but how do I help you? I'm like, this is so helpful. Just talking to you is so helpful because it solidifies things. So anyway, so net, that is um, how I think about it.
You know what, Purna? Before we finish this episode, I've got one more thought about the elevator being sent down. So hopefully, I'm going to remember to return to that point one last time. But as we mentioned, you're going to take us through this walk, crawl, run framework. So why don't you go ahead and break that down for us?
Sure. And so I love looking at crawl, walk, run frameworks and applying them to different things because it helps break it down. And so many times I get asked, and whether you're an executive looking to build your thought leadership or a subject matter expert, same thing applies. Where do I start? I want to build my brand. And so I'm like, okay, let's break it down because Rome wasn't built in a day, neither will your brand be. So that step one will be go to LinkedIn. I'm like, always start on LinkedIn if you're looking at it professionally, not because I work for LinkedIn, but I did it myself. It worked great. Complete your profile and walk. Like, what are the baby steps that you can start with? So the first step is, do you have a complete profile? Do you have a professional image? Right now with AI, you can get that so much easier as well. Fill out things and speak like a human. Like we put it there, like, I do this, or, here's what I want, like speak in as a real person rather than that sort of third party overly formal speak. Like be relatable, right? Even if you're business to business people are human too. And so start with filling out your profile, then start to ideate what are those 2 or 3 like core buckets that you want to be known for or associated with. So for example, with me, like 2 of my buckets are of course marketing and then leadership. I'm passionate about both. I speak about both. Usually the content that I post falls into one of these 2 buckets or any of my additional buckets. And then go and follow to get a feel for who else is creating content in those areas. Find, people that you really relate to, that you find are very popular with the audience you're targeting, and just set that up and get a feel for sort of the rhythm of posting, the type of content, seeing what gets the thing. And it's such a small thing. You could do this over the course of a week, even, and spread it out like 10 minutes a day, and you'd still give yourself a big sort of step up. Then let's go, that's crawling. So then when we walk, now we're ready to start creating. So with walk, maybe consider trying to come up with some ideas for posting, or if you're not even ready for that yet, try to engage with comments, try to engage with some meaningful dialogue, start building a little bit of a following and interaction and a cadence of posting. Maybe curate a content, like share an article. But one important thing, especially on LinkedIn, is don't just repost or don't just share an article. It might seem self-explanatory, but what the algorithm and what helps build trust is sharing your perspective, showing who you are. Like, why am I sharing this article? I might say like, hey, everybody should follow like Anthem's podcast with Dan, because Dan is not just business. He brings about the heart and soul of people and life and business as well. Like share what you like about it in there too. And then once you've established that, you're getting more comfortable, go to run, which is find your cadence. Does not have to be 1 post a day or 10 posts a day. Once a week as well is great. Ideally 2 or 3 times a week is great. And you don't have to post all the time, but post regularly and consistently, and that can help. And if I can add one last tidbit is, don't let fear or awkwardness hold you back. Like you're never going to have that perfect post before you put it. You just learn by doing. So you're going to learn by creating. You're going to put stuff out there. 6 months later, you're going to look back and be like, eek, what was I thinking? Like that's so cringe. But that's okay because you learned, right? You've evolved. So don't let fear of messing up, don't let self rejection or judgment hold you back. Go out there and post. No one will remember like a week from now, like unless you said some absolutely like horrible out of pocket things. But most people don't do that.
It's so true that every so often I have like a brainwave, or what I think is a brainwave. If I'm in the shower, I'm going for a walk, and I think of a really pithy post, and I just think people are going to love this. The engagement is going to skyrocket. I'm about to go viral for the first time. And then I post it and it goes absolutely nowhere. And one of the things I've realized is that, hey, just give those things a go, because you do learn something every time. That maybe that you've included a link, or you've asked for too much engagement, or that you've actually overcomplicated something simple by asking for too much from the viewer, or maybe your sense of humor isn't as obvious as you first thought. And actually, you've said something that you think's funny, but actually people didn't really get it straight away, so they didn't engage with it. But one of the things I've realized is that, hey, do you know what? If it doesn't fly, it doesn't matter. As you say, disappears down the news feed and no one's going to remember. So you might as well give those things a go, have some fun with it. But also remember that your next post probably isn't going to break the internet.
But who wants to break the internet when your goal is not to go viral every time? Like, you want to reach your niche audience and almost use your post to filter out irrelevant ones. Like, I've almost found you don't need thousands and thousands of followers. You just need 20 of the right ones. And then that's what's going to build. And, it takes definitely like 90 days of plus, on average. That's not an official LinkedIn number. I'll just say, like, that's what I've seen from my experience of just consistent posting over time is when you start to see the follower build, and I'll build organically. And you want a smaller number of the right people is always, always 10x better than 100,000 of random, irrelevant people too. So, don't worry as well and have fun with it. Because marketing is supposed to be fun, and it's so easy in this time of turmoil and worry or even just day-to-day grind of work, to forget that, marketing is fun. Creativity sparks joy. So just go for it, have fun. Don't put pressure on yourself immediately to drive tangible outcomes. Like, they will come for sure. Like, I've noticed, for example, Dan, like, you invited me after a while of me posting, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, what a success to get to chat with an awesome, podcast host and be on the Anthem podcast. So, things like these will come. Figure out your goals, what you want from it, and it will happen.
You're so right. And I think the other thing that is important, this happens in YouTube quite a lot, is people creating videos and content for the gaps. And I think that is doing such an injustice to so many people's creative excellence when they start thinking, well, where's the gap that I can fill? Rather than creating from the heart, creating from the foundation of your passion, and instead creating for the gaps as defined by algorithms. Yes, that might be a way to get reach, but you're going to spend your life building stuff and talking stuff that you don't really love.
Mm-hmm.
You might actually go viral or you might get attention, but so what? You're so right. When you start to create for your niche or your space or the thing that you're passionate about, actually your content might not travel as far on a global scale, but it's going to reach the right people at the right time. And on the back of that, you can build a pretty decent career.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say to all the creators out there, look, Purna's absolutely right. Don't make to go viral. Don't make for the algorithm. Make stuff that you're passionate about.
I almost think about it as a Venn diagram. So you want to start, of course, with the things that you're passionate about, because that's so important, because then that's the only way it will sustain. I know nothing about interior design. So if you're like, Purna, I need you to post for the next 90 days about interior design, I'm like, holy crap, like I can't even think of like 2 ideas, like let alone enough for 90 days. So I talk about what I'm passionate about, because there's no dearth of ideas. And then that's one circle. Then my second circle would be what's the design outcomes that I'm looking for? Like, what are those sort of business goals and where is the overlap? Find that. And then there is a third outcome, which is how do I talk about it in a way that stands out? So not quite the gap in terms of, algo purely, but what if I was a chat GPT, if I was trying to talk about chat GPT and it made a difference for my company, but if I put out the 800 billionth post about, 10 prompts for chat GPT, it's not going to do anything for me because it's saturated. So like find areas of non-saturation or that you can come with a fresh angle. And your key is the overlap ultimately between what adds value for your audience and then what you're passionate about and can talk about that'll drive value for you. And if you focus on that, you're golden. And it's, you will get those really amazing outcomes, even with, quote unquote, smaller number of engagements um, than let's say like Instagram's biggest influencer, for example.
Well, that's it. The smaller number of engagements, technically speaking, but the right number of engagements for you. You're going to be connecting with the right people who are going to help you move forward in your career and in your business and in your marketing. Purna, we love to finish these episodes with something really practical for people to take away and try. We have definitely covered that already. There's been so much value packed into this episode. And you may have already covered this, or you may want to add a final thought or a single thing that people should take away and do as soon as the episode finishes. So, what would that be? Like I say, you may have already covered it, but where should people start as soon as the episode finishes?
I would go back to find out what you want to talk about, and then find the overlap between what your audience needs, and then just create. Like, don't wait for the perfect idea to strike you, or like, obsess over getting every word perfect. Just go out there, post, find the medium that's authentic to you. Like, I post a lot of video because I love talking. As you can tell, I don't shut up. And so for me, I post a lot of video because that's authentic and it flows. Some people like to post stream of thought. Like, find what's authentic to you and then go for it. Like, you don't have to look like anyone else. And that's actually a really good thing. There's no one else like you in the world. So showcase you, and you will be delighted by the outcomes.
Purna, we are just about coming into land, but I promised the audience and I promised you that we'd talk about elevators one last time. There's been more elevator chat in this call than I had expected, but it's a wonderful reference point because you mentioned that, when somebody sends the elevator down for you, it's your job to send it down for other people. I'd like our listeners and viewers today to remember this. When we talked about our LinkedIn profiles and when people see the kind of the playlist, the hit list, the show reel of our careers, there are going to be lots of people who are looking at your profile. I'm talking to you, listener, viewer, and they're seeing your hit list. They're seeing your show reel. They're seeing your highlights. To them, you are way up there in the elevator. And I want to encourage you to think about, how can you send the elevator down to others? You might not feel that you're on an upper floor, but I promise you, the whole bunch of people looking at your profile, you are. There are ways that you can serve. There are ways that you can give. There are ways that you can send the elevator down for others, even if that's not how you perceive yourself. So I want to encourage everybody to go away and think about that, but also think about the overlap of your passion point, your content, and how you can say those things in a really unique way, and just get creating. But as I said, we're coming into land and we're about done in time for today's episode. Purna, it's been so great having you on the show. Thank you for making some time for Strategy Short, and let's speak again soon.
Thank you for having me, Dan. This was wonderful.